Good morning, everyone. Here we are back again, yet another week. All exciting stuff going on. And we're happy that you guys are here. How's it going? My name is, I asked that question and then I cut her off. That's terrible. How's it going?
It's going well. It's bright and sunny today, and so I'm happy.
That is very cool. Well, my name is Brenda and Suzanne. I am known as Brenda, the HR lady. And to that way is Suzanne Lucas, who's known as the evil HR lady. And we're going to flash up how you guys can find us on our social media. And we are the real HR show.
Yes, not the fake one.
That's right. No preservatives, no additives on top of it.
Right.
That's right. We are what we are. Sassy, funny, smart.
And it needed a little touch up on our fake roots. Not on our fake roots, on mine. Brenda's hair looks fabulous. Me, I'm looking in this thing going, oh boy, I really should have touched up my roots, but I didn't.
Well, you did.
That's the fake part of
So with everything that's going on in the election, we've decided to do something fun and lighthearted because right now it's just frustrating and chaotic. And so when things are frustrating and chaotic, you have to do just the opposite, and that's have fun and lighten up. So
absolutely. And people complain a lot about HR and there's stressful things, and heaven knows every HR person on the planet has been under tremendous stress this entire year.
Yeah.
The whole world has been, but I really think HR in general has been really at the center of a lot of it. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of good times in HR and a lot of funny things that happen and a lot of things that maybe we shouldn't laugh at, but we do.
We're about ready to. Just saying.
There you go. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the lighter side of HR and some of the fun stuff, some of the crazy stuff.
That's right. We're going to talk about the funny things that we've experienced in our tenure, and trust me, there's enough.
There's enough.
So do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I'm going to start with I was not an HR person at all in this, but it was my first time observing a job interview. I was actually the summer between college and graduate school. I got a temp job selling truck bumpers. So there was a time in my life when I knew everything there was to know about pickup truck bumpers. Before I got that job, I didn't know that you could buy a different bumper with your truck, but you can. Anyway, so I was in the office with the manager, and I was not an outside salesperson. I was inside. I was taking orders over the phone. I wouldn't even call it inside sales. I was more customer service. But anyway, truck bumpers. And they were hiring a new person for a warehouse job. And so for warehouse, you don't expect people to show up in a suit, right? That's fine. But it was my first time sitting there observing this interview process. And the first candidate showed up, and I kid you not, she was wearing Daisy Duke shorts. And so if you're younger, maybe you don't know what Daisy Duke shorts are, but Brenda knows because she's old like I am. And if she'd shown up in knee-length shorts, she probably would have gotten the job. There wasn't a lot of qualifications for this job, but the Daisy Dukes, they kind of did her in. And after she left, I admit that I and the manager, we snickered. Like, come on, at least don't have your butt cheeks hanging out for your job interview. So that was my first introduction to interview. I didn't interview her. I just observed the candidate. And maybe that's what led me down the path, as I was like, maybe I will see something like this again. And I have.
So I think one of the craziest things that I've ever experienced in interviewing is when I worked for a Fortune 500 company, which will remain nameless, one of five. And the way that we interviewed the facility was open format, so we had individual desks, but we didn't have partitions, or we didn't have cubicles at the time. And we had this one guy that came in for an interview in our sales team, and that when somebody doesn't answer the question that you asked because they're not paying attention, you're in for a ride. And the very first question was, so, help me understand, what made you interested in applying for the job here? And I got a 20-minute response that had nothing to do with the question. And about halfway through it, and I was really grateful that everything that was open format, because the people could have eyes on me when they were walking back and forth for safety reasons now at this point, was when the guy said, started just, like randomly talking about how things were in his personal life with his live-in girlfriend. And then he, went so far as to tell me that, when she gets out of hand, sometimes you just have to slap the bitch. And that was like his exact words. And I was like, woo. So yeah, we got through that one without any mishaps.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
I bet you passed on that guy.
Yeah. The second craziest thing that I've seen in hiring was when, same kind of format, sitting down doing an interview, and this gentleman was clearly foreign. I don't remember where he was from. But all of a sudden, this woman came up and sat down right next to him in the middle of the interview and started breastfeeding a baby. And it turned out it was his wife. So he brought his wife and his child to the interview, of which he felt it was appropriate to sit down next to him, pop out a boob, and start nursing right in front of me in the interview.
Now, see, as someone who is a rabid breastfeeder, although I don't care what you feed your babies, I've breastfed in front of everybody and everything. So there you go. But not in a job interview, and certainly not in my husband's job interview.
Right?
That takes it over the limit, on the bus, okay. In church, okay. In a job interview,
No.
no.
So when they say there's a time and a place for everything, good example.
That reminds me of, there used to be a blog from a woman who was an HR manager. No, she was a business manager, but she did a lot of hiring in Oman, and the culture there, Middle Eastern, very different, very different. Mm-hmm. And when women would come in for job interviews, they would bring their whole family, all the kids, their husbands, sometimes their mothers, just the whole family came. It was a family event, and she just had to work with it because that was culture. You couldn't, but that is not the culture in the US, and you should leave your spouse and your baby home. And if you yourself, the candidate, are breastfeeding during the job interview, is not the time to do that. Feed the baby before you go.
Yep, exactly. All right, it's your turn.
Oh gosh. So I had a woman sit down with me, and she was telling all of her troubles, and she was trying to justify a particular decision, which wasn't very justifiable. But you know how when people are trying to justify things, they will ramble and try to get you on their side. And she comes out with this line. I swear this is a direct quote. Suzanne, I've never really cared for sex. That's what my face did.
Wow.
And I was like, oh boy. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, my smart ass inside of me would want to say, I'm sorry to hear that, but the professional side of me would have put that through the shut up filter and would have handled it much differently.
Yeah, I mean, what do you say? That's exactly the professional side of me. I literally just didn't say anything. I was just like staring, which probably wasn't the best professional response either, but I was so shocked. It was like, what in the heck have I just gotten myself into?
Oh,
And of course, she continued to make bad choices. And that's what happened.
inevitably, yeah.
Inevitably. I mean, you could see it from a mile away that she wasn't going to change her foolish behavior. And she wasn't doing bad things, just foolish things,
Yeah.
It's those little things that can sometimes just add up and cause
Big
havoc.
things to happen.
And then suddenly you're telling people that you never really cared for sex. I was like, boy, now I know you really well.
A little too well. So, it's funny what coworkers start talking about. And this, again, I was very, very young in my HR career. And we had this guy that we used to work with. We nicknamed him Tall Tales. Or I didn't nickname him. The guys that worked with him nicknamed him Tall Tales. And it got to the point where I was so happy I had gotten the job that I did that I could like get away from this person. I didn't have to sit and listen to all this weird stuff that he kept talking about. But the best story of all time that I have ever heard come out of his mouth, I had to relay. So like a year and a half later, to my two supervisors, and to this day, nobody's been able to beat it. No one's been able to beat it. So
Oh boy.
this guy, yep, I couldn't even tell you if he's still alive or not. But we were out back hanging out on a break, and he comes over, and the guy I'm with is a former Marine. And so he and I are talking, and then in comes Tall Tales. And I hear the guy that I'm, hanging out with, he's like, oh Lord. like, oh, here we go. We couldn't get out of there fast enough. So I don't know why or how it started, but it did. And Tall Tales started going off about how when he was in Vietnam, which I did the math, and there's no way in hell that he would be able to actually do everything that he said he did. I think he was like 17 by the time this particular year of this incident actually would have taken place, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and back then, I will preface this by saying I didn't know a lot about Navy SEALs back then. Certainly not as much as I do today, but nothing that he said made sense. And so he was telling us that he got into the Navy and went in, became a Navy SEAL. Then he decided he didn't want to do that anymore. And a year later, he was an F-4 fighter pilot, which that is not how it works.
That is not how it works.
It's not how it works. So, but it gets better. So, I mean, we're listening to this, and the other guy and I were just kind of looking at each other like that. None of that sounds right. I mean, of course, we didn't know, but it just didn't sound right, right? My BS antenna was up. And so anyway, so this guy continues to go on that he was on a strafing run in Vietnam, and he took small arms fire, which I didn't know anything about small arms back then either, but the guy I was with did. And supposedly, supposedly, several 9mm rounds went into the fuselage of this F-4 and hit his leg. He somehow managed to miraculously land the plane. They pulled him out, put him into a hospital, and this is where it gets really good. The doctors, in his best interest, decided to amputate his leg, put it into a baby incubator hooked up to life support all night long, where he could sit there and watch his toes wiggle, and then they reattached his leg.
Of course that happened. That's a true story, Brenda. I'm disappointed in you.
Oh my gosh. I just looked at him. I'm like, I got stuff I gotta get done. I gotta go. I gotta go. It's like, what?
And that was in the Vietnam War. So we're talking late 60s, early 70s when they were doing this life-saving
Yeah. When they just arbitrarily removed your leg because you had a bullet wound, just to sit there overnight and then reattach it after it's been sitting in a baby incubator where you could watch your toes wiggle because it was on life support.
I'm suspecting that he was more of the drug usage part of
He tested negative, so we're good there.
this.
All right, you're up
There you
next.
go. All right. So I've laid off a lot of people, and there's not a lot of humorous things that happen when you lay people off. It's rather depressing. But layoff rumors were flying. People knew that it was coming. And we went to tell this one guy that he was going to be part of the termination, and today was his last day. And he just started laughing. And he's like, I am so excited. Thank you. And we're like, you're welcome. And it turns out that he had figured out that he was going to be on the list. He had a brand new job starting on Monday. He had really cut it. This was probably on a Wednesday or something. We terminated on Tuesdays or Wednesdays when we did layoffs, if at all possible. So he had a new job starting the next week, and he had refrained from resigning because he knew once he resigned, he wouldn't get a package. But now that we'd offered him the package, he was getting 6 months of severance and a new job that started on Monday. And
wow.
So he was one happy camper, and you don't normally get that when you do layoffs. I mean, you get all sorts of reactions. You get some people that are really upset. You get some people that know it's coming and are kind of resigned to it. You get some people that have volunteered and they're certainly okay with it. But he's my only super, super happy because he gambled and he won.
And he won big time. Yeah.
He won big time. And we were like, good job. You guessed it. And good job for you. Like, I can imagine some mean people would have been like, well, since you're, have already found another job, you should have resigned and we're not going to give it to you. But we were like, sign on the dotted line. We'll get you your severance check. And I guess you don't need to extend those benefits, do you? That's not something that happens often, but it makes a layoff nicer when that does happen, which doesn't, as I said, it doesn't happen often.
Yeah. No, that was a good one. Holy cow.
Yeah, he was lucky.
Yeah, he was. All right. Additional shenanigans. Let's see what else. I've had so many good ones. Oh my gosh, it's hard for me. Oh, so this was a long time ago when I worked as a store manager in a clothing store, which unfortunately went bankrupt. But we had an assistant manager who, and it was interesting because the more I think about this now, is that this company, part of their downfall is that employees, the culture of the company allowed managers to give way too many discounts. Like, they honored discounts that they shouldn't have. And I saw it a lot and I thought, man, this is interesting. But anyway, so we were right at the end of the organization's life cycle. We didn't know what was going on, but it had come down that a particular sale was going to go on, and these items very specifically were going to be at, I think it was like a 40% discount or something like that. And it was 20%. And if anybody were to extend this discount using whatever code it was that we were using for that, for any other merchandise other than what was listed, was going to be terminated. And that came down from the president of the company. And so, sure enough, my assistant manager, who, God bless her, she was dingy, just didn't get anything. It's like, we were talking about how to move your business forward. And she said, make sure that you keep your people in line, like keep your customers in line so they don't cut in front of each other. And that's what'll help you move your business. I mean, she just didn't get it. Right. And so anyway, so she actually wound up extending the discount, and it came back in an audit, and we had to fire her. And it took 2.5 hours to terminate her because she was just crying and carrying on, and it was bad. I remember the district manager, my old boss, she came in and she goes, I have never had to experience anything like that before. and just crying for 2.5 hours it took to terminate her.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah. She was unconsolable for 2.5 hours. So
That happens.
it does.
Yeah, I mean, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Terminations are not easy.
No, they're not.
Even when it's an earned termination, it's not easy. It's not
Yes.
easy.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. A little more lighthearted on the hiring side of things. And I was not the recruiter in this case. I was in HR, but I was in HRIS. I was a techie person. And a friend of a friend, probably a friend of a friend of a friend. I don't even remember how I hooked up with. That sounds terrible. Hooked up is not the right term because I know the you youngins use that to mean something that doesn't mean for me. Anyway, I agreed to forward this guy who I never met resume. Like I think he was a friend's son or something. I don't recall. And so I'm like, sure, I'll forward it. He was applying for a pharmaceutical sales position. And salespeople sometimes can be a little bit on the pushy side. And so I, forward his email to the recruiter, and I'm like, and I'm always honest if I don't know the person personally, I'm just forwarding their email as a favor. I will tell the recruiter, like, this is my friend Jane's son. I don't know anything about him, but here you go.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, you should hire this person who I've never met, because my reputation is important to me.
Right. No, I hear you.
I don't know. So then he starts doing all of those bad things, like, I'm going to send a shoe so that I can just get a foot in the door. And he starts emailing me all of his great ideas that he's going to send to this recruiter. And I'm typing rapidly back to be like, don't do that. And he's like, no, well, what about this? What about that? And he had all of these crazy ideas. And I messaged the recruiter. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I had no idea.
I apologize in advance.
I had to apologize in advance. And she's like, oh, we have a wall where we put up all of that stuff that people do. And because in this was a Fortune 50 pharma company, and there's a ton of hiring. And when you have a ton of hiring, you get a ton of ridiculous things like that. And they just would put them up on the wall. Properly redacted to not embarrass anybody, but still.
I had an instance where I was doing an interview with somebody, and I had an observer, which is very rare, but it was kind of an educational moment, training, learning, development moment. And this, we had this one candidate that was sitting there, and I asked him, I said, so, what is it? I said, if you could create your ideal work environment, what would that look like? What would it be? And he sat there for 3 minutes and couldn't come up with an answer. None whatsoever. He goes, I don't know. I said, inside, outside? He goes, yeah, I have no idea. I was like, okay. Moving on.
Moving on.
Got it.
Poor guy.
Got it.
Complete brain freeze. It does happen.
Yeah, or something. There's something. So yeah, so these tend to get pretty interesting. And so my question to you, because we do a question at the end of towards the end of every episode. So my question today for you is this. It's very specific, and it has to deal with this topic.
Okay.
What has been the funniest mistake at work that you have personally ever made? And if you want to ask me that question, I will be happy to answer it as well.
The funniest mistake I've ever personally made?
Yeah, so that somebody like us would be reflecting back on what you did and getting a good laugh out of it.
Well, there's two big ones that stand out in my mind. So I'm going to tell you both of them because I'm an open book. The first wasn't technically at work. It was when I was interviewing for a job. And I was straight out of graduate school, and I had worked selling truck bumpers, and I had worked at Kmart and fast food, and then I had been a research assistant, and then in graduate school I had taught classes, but I hadn't really ever had a real professional job.
Right.
So I was completely green, and I had a master's degree in political science, which is not exactly what people are looking for. And I got an interview with this law firm, and as they're explaining the job to me, I just blurted out, "That sounds really boring. How do you keep it interesting?"
Oh my God, you've been like this your whole life.
And after I said it, I was like, "Oh dear, that was the wrong answer."
I didn't go over quite what we thought
That
it was
was
gonna
my big. I have since gotten better at job interviews, and I no longer say that sounds really boring.
be. Your internal monologue doesn't come flying out.
But to be fair, it sounded really boring. And in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't get the job, because if I had gotten the job, I would have taken it because I needed a job. And then I never would have found myself on this HR path that has brought me joy. And my biggest career mistake, it's not funny, it's kind of tragic, but it's funny as well. So I mentioned I've done a lot of layoffs, and I was what we called the subject matter expert. My job share partner and I was in a job share. It was fabulous. We were the experts on layoffs. And so anybody had questions, they would come to us. We wrote all the documents. They were approved by lawyers, but we did the writing, and all of that stuff. And one of the deals was we had life insurance for employees. And so if you died, you would get this life insurance payout, but then you would no longer be eligible for layoffs because you were dead. Somehow,
That makes sense.
I checked a wrong box, and I sent this dead guy's information to payroll to be paid severance. And he was a fairly highly paid person. And severance came as live checks. They wouldn't do direct deposit, and they insisted they couldn't do it, but I just think that they didn't want to. But anyway, and so once I sent it to payroll, it's just, okay, I'm now done. I'm now done with this person. And first check cashed, no problem. Second check, the bank says this needs to be made out to the estate of dead employee instead of dead employee. And so his wife calls and is like, "Can you change the check?" And I'm like, "Oh, crap." And it was really, really awful. And fortunately, because it was a humongous company with a lot of money, my bosses, they discussed it, and they're like, "We're just going to let her keep the money and not, we won't give her any more," because she got the life insurance, which is more than the severance. But yeah, that was my big embarrassing mistake. And I'm so grateful to my boss who could have fired me for that. And, it was one of those things where, because I was in a job share, I was like, "Please let Patty have been the one to do this. Nope, it was me." It was me. And I did go to my boss. I'm like, "It was me. It was not Patty. It was me. I did this." And she was super nice. And
Well, that's
the
good.
lady, she lost her husband, which is tragic, but she got an extra $20,000. So there you go. So I will ask you the same question. What's the biggest mistake you've made at work?
So I would say a big mistake that I made, and I've only made it once, is that I actually missed a merit increase one time for payroll and just had to get it sent in again. But I will tell you the funniest mistake that I ever made. Most of my mistakes always, like if I make a colossal mistake, it's really strange. The business always benefits from it. It's the weirdest thing in the world. I don't know how that happens, but it just does. So my little mistakes are the ones that everybody seems to remember. Nobody remembers the big ones because we all benefit from it. It's really bizarre. And so it was right when I was first realizing that I was dyslexic. I mean, I always knew something was off, but now it had a name to it and it had like something that I could understand. I had a definition. And so it was my very first workers' compensation claim that I had to call in. And I got on the phone with our HR director. And I said, hey, listen, I haven't done this before. And I just want to know, what do I need to look out for? Is there anything else that's not in the process that, I should be aware of? And then he says, well, what's it for? And I said, well, the person is actually, filed a complaint on tunnel carpal syndrome. He got quiet. He goes, excuse me? And I said, it was for tunnel carpal syndrome. And he's like, okay. He started laughing. And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? And so I just kept going on, and he says, please continue. And we were talking about it, and I went through the whole thing with him, what the guy came in complaining about, why he came in. And he goes, okay. And he says, let me back up a second. He said, okay, so the condition is, and I said, tunnel carpal syndrome. And he started laughing. And I'm like, what is your deal? Right. Now I was starting to get angry. And because I'm like, this is a serious condition. And so I actually started to get angry at the guy, at the director about it. And then he says, okay, he says, tell me one more time. And I said, it's tunnel carpal syndrome. And he just is howling in laughter. And now I'm pissed. And so I said, what is your problem? I said, this is a serious situation. I can't believe you're sitting here laughing at this poor guy. Like, I have no idea what I'm saying, right? And I do this all the time. And then he says, I'm not laughing at him. He says, honestly, I'm laughing at you. And he says, say it again, but listen to what you're saying. And as soon as I said it, I was like, oh my God. And he said, that's why I'm laughing. And so now I have to really think about it before I say it. It's carpal tunnel syndrome, not tunnel carpal syndrome.
I love it.
I love it so much. Yeah. And he says, you're blue, because I always wore blue glasses once I started reading. And he says, blue glasses aren't going to help you today. I said, apparently not. And I'm glad you got a really good laugh out of it. So
sometimes brains just do that to us.
Mine does it more frequently than people actually realize. But yeah, it's just, I was like, I was getting fired up, and I was about ready to just go, half cocked on the guy over the phone for, being such an insensitive jerk towards one of my employees. And it turns out he's just being an insensitive jerk.
It's serious condition, you start laughing.
That's right. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, timing is everything, but that's so funny.
Funny things happen. Sometimes we cause them, and sometimes laughter is just the best medicine to deal with.
Oh, and Lord knows, do we need it right now? Holy cow.
So we do. We need laughter. And,
yes, we do.
Yes, very much so.
So we're going to wrap this up here because we have got to get ready for the HR Summit that is taking place today. And we have two groups that we are very much involved with, and we work with, and we help people with. And I'll name him George. Anyway, would you like to go ahead and share with everybody the Evil HR Lady group?
Yeah, you can come to Facebook. We're Evil HR Lady on Facebook. We are a very large, active, loudmouth group. But We are also very kind and considerate. And if you have an HR question, if you're an HR person that needs some support from other HR people, we are there for you. So many HR people are HR departments of one or two, and we really strive to be your coworkers. Plus, any employee, any person, and sometimes, okay, a lot of the times, we just share funny memes. We're the best source
You
for
guys
HR.
do have, yeah, your group does have good funny memes, that's for sure. I
Right?
think I've stolen one or two from my group,
They're
but
good, man. They're good.
they are. All right. So the next group is the Women in HR, excuse me, the Next Gen Women in HR group. That is a group that I lead. We're a young group. We're under a year old still, but we are growing. And we do all sorts of cool stuff. We do sometimes free webinars, free videos. We do Q&A, but we're mostly there to help everybody else out. I try and push out some really great information that's pertinent, timely, and get that info out. So we are looking to grow, and we would love to have you guys there. Also, to mention today, we are preparing for, I got to get my, there we go, the virtual HR summit. And we have an overwhelming number of people registering for this, which is fantastic. And we know that it's possible not everybody's going to show up. So if you are interested, by all means, go ahead and register. You can do that by jumping on last minute at therealhrshow.com, and you'll be able to do that. We've got some fantastic speakers. Suzanne's going to be kicking it off Monday today.
Yay!
And yay, she's going to be talking about HR in the age of social media. Our next person is going to be Tay Nelms. Tay and I go way back, all the way back to our grade school and formidable years. She is actually a former HR professional for the Bellagio and for Treasure Island Hotel in Las Vegas. She's going to actually be talking on things around change management, which is also very appropriate right now. And I'm going to be hopping on Wednesday talking about HR leadership. Thursday is going to be Steve Watson. Steve is awesome, and he loves to be talking about how to solve the mathematical problem that is benefits and help people save money. And he's going to be talking about the 5 HR hacks as it pertains to benefits for 2021. And then I'm going to be wrapping it up again on Friday. And Friday, I'm going to be talking about how to actually move forward with your career, your education, and even if it doesn't matter what level that you're at, and the support that we've got in order to do that. So, gonna have some pretty awesome stuff. Looking forward to it, big time. And yep. So we're gonna go ahead and flash up here how you guys can find us one more time, real quick. Our social stuff, and then I will see you, ma'am,
in an hour.
That's right. Now, if it turns out that if you register and you try and get in and it's full, we are actually going to be recording this session and sending it out to people who are unable to get in. That's only if it's full. So it's not a situation where you can just register and you're like, oh, I'm going to get it and I'll be able to watch it later. That's not what we're doing. If you try and get in and you weren't able to, then we're going to go ahead and send it to you. So so the maximum capacity is 100 seats, and we've got well over 100 people that have registered. It's always been a first come, first serve. So if you try to get in and you can't, we're going to get that information out to you. So we will see you guys hopefully in an hour. If not, we're going to see you next week.
There you go. All right. See you later.